Find her. My daughter couldn't have gone far. The man's voice cut through the forest like a blade, and Elena felt her blood freeze in her veins. Father. The word that once meant protection now carried only poison. Her legs burned, her bare feet leaving trails of blood on the stones and roots, but she couldn't stop. Not after what she had discovered. Not after reading those documents hidden in his study. Mira, her little sister, sold like cattle 2 months ago while she believed the lie that she was studying with distant relatives. The contracts were there, black ink on yellowed paper, her father's signature at the bottom, a death sentence. And she was next. The second contract already had her name on it. The blood trail is fresh. Another voice, one of the henchmen. She's close. Elena stumbled and fell hard, a branch tearing her dress and her skin. She tried to get up, but her legs finally gave out. Her body had reached its limit. She crawled to a tree and pressed her back against the trunk, her wild eyes scanning the darkness between the trees. 4 men, maybe 5, and her father, who hunted her like an animal because she was worth gold to the right buyers. 300 coins, the contract said. That was her value to the man who had raised her. Elena? Aldrich's voice echoed again, closer now, laden with that false authority she had obeyed her entire life. Enough of this foolishness. Come out now, and perhaps I'll forget this rebellion. She pressed her hand against her mouth to muffle the sob that threatened to escape. That's when she saw the movement in the shadows. A man emerged from the darkness as if made of it. Tall, broad-shouldered, a bow in his hands that seemed like an extension of his body. His eyes met hers, and he raised a finger to his lips. Silence. Then he pointed to a nearby rock formation and whispered just 3 words. Hide. I'll handle them. Elena didn't know what made her obey. Perhaps it was the absolute exhaustion that made any decision impossible. Perhaps it was something in the stranger's eyes. A calm that didn't match predators. A seriousness that seemed more protective than threatening. Or perhaps it was simply the fact that he was her only chance. She dragged herself toward the rocks, each movement sending waves of agony through her destroyed feet. She found the cavity he had indicated small, dark, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. She curled up inside, hugging her knees, and prayed to every god she knew. The stranger had vanished into the shadows as if he had never existed. For one terrible moment, Elena thought she had imagined everything, that exhaustion was making her mind create phantoms of salvation. Then the voices arrived. The trail ends here. The scarred henchman examined the ground, the torch in his hand casting dancing shadows between the trees. She must be hiding nearby. 3 more men emerged from the darkness, forming a semicircle, and behind them, walking with the arrogance of someone who had never been defied, came Aldrich. Elena watched her father through a gap between the rocks, the man who had raised her, who had taught her to read, who sang to her when she was a child and afraid of storms. How could that man and this monster inhabit the same body? When had the father she loved become this creature of greed? Elena. Aldrich's voice was poisoned honey. I know you're there, dear. We can resolve this as a family. There's no need for all this drama. She bit her own fist to keep from screaming. Think of your sister, he continued, and the mention of Mira was like a knife to Elena's chest. You know her treatment depends on your behavior. The buyers from the East are known for being less gentle with their acquisitions. That's where Mira will go if you continue with this rebellion. A tear ran down Elena's face. Mira, 16 years old, eyes full of dreams and a laugh that lit up any room. Now, she was the property of some monster in distant lands, all because the man who should have protected her had decided that gold was worth more than blood. Lord Aldrich, the scarred henchman pointed to the rock formation. She might be in there. Aldrich smiled. That smile Elena now recognized as a predator's mask. Surround the rocks. Pull her out of there, but carefully. She's worth less damage. The men began to move, and then the first scream cut through the night. An arrow had pierced the thigh of the nearest henchman, dropping him instantly. Before the others could react, a second arrow sang through the air and embedded itself in the tree inches from Aldrich's face. The next one hits an eye. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, impossible to locate. You have 5 seconds to drop your weapons. Who's there? Aldrich retreated, all arrogance evaporating. Show yourself, coward. 1, This is a private matter. I'm simply recovering my property. 2. Elena noticed the tremor in her father's voice. For the first time in her life, she saw genuine fear on that face. The man who controlled everything, who manipulated everyone, was completely out of his element. I'll pay. How much do you want? Aldrich shouted at the shadows. 100 gold coins? 200? 3. The youngest henchman broke first. He dropped his sword and ran into the forest without looking back. The second hesitated only a moment before following. The scarred one dragged himself away, the arrow still in his thigh, groans of pain marking his retreat. 4. Aldrich was alone now. The mask had fallen completely, revealing what had always been underneath a small, cruel man who only knew how to exercise power over the weak. You don't know who I am. He spat the words, but his voice was shrill with fear. I have connections, influence. I'll destroy you. The third arrow passed so close to his ear, it drew blood. Aldrich screamed, his hand flying to the side of his head, and the rest of his composure disintegrated completely. 5. He ran. The great Aldrich, lord of lands, seller of daughters, ran through the forest like the coward he had always been beneath his fine clothes. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena remained in her hiding place, unable to process what she had just witnessed. Terror still pulsed through her veins, mixed now with something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. You can come out. The voice came from nearby, calm, devoid of threat. They're gone. She emerged slowly from the cavity between the rocks, her body protesting every movement. The stranger was there, a few meters away, his bow now resting on his back. The moonlight revealed his face marked by time and experience, with dark eyes that carried stories she couldn't decipher. You. Elena couldn't complete the sentence. Her voice simply died. My name is Kael. He didn't approach. He maintained his distance as if he instinctively knew she needed space. I live in this forest. Why did you help me? The question came out before she could contain it. Years of distrust, of discovering that people always wanted something, had taught Elena that free kindness was an illusion. Kael seemed to consider the question seriously before answering. Because I heard what he said. About selling you. About your sister. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her want to retreat and advance at the same time. And because there are things in this world worth fighting for, even when they don't concern us, Elena felt the tears coming before she could stop them. Days of terror, of flight, of absolute solitude, crumbled in a single moment. Her knees gave way and she fell to the forest floor, sobs shaking her exhausted body. Kael didn't move, didn't try to touch her or comfort her. He simply remained there, a silent and constant presence, guarding her while she let out the pain she had carried alone for too long. When the sobs finally subsided, he spoke again. You're injured. Your feet need care. He pointed with his chin in a specific direction through the trees. My cabin is an hour's walk away. You can rest there, tend to your wounds. Then we'll decide what to do. We'll decide? Elena looked at him through swollen eyes. Why do you care what happens to me? I didn't say I care. The answer was direct, without cruelty. I said we can decide. You'll have a choice. That's more than your father offered. Choice. The word seemed strange, almost foreign. When was the last time anyone had given Elena a real choice? I can't walk, she admitted, hating her own weakness. My feet. Kael nodded, as if he had already expected this. He removed the cloak he wore over his shoulders and extended it toward her. Use this to cover yourself. It will get cold during the night. He approached slowly, each movement telegraphed, giving her time to refuse. I can carry you if you allow it, or I can fetch supplies and come back to treat you here. The choice is yours. Elena looked at the extended cloak, then at the face of the man offering it. There was no expectation there, no pressure, just an offer and the patience to wait for an answer. The cabin, she whispered finally. Take me to the cabin. The journey through the forest was silent, punctuated only by the sound of Kael's footsteps and Elena's irregular breathing. He carried her with surprising care for someone of his build, avoiding low branches and adjusting her whenever the terrain became uneven. Elena should have been terrified. She was in the arms of a stranger, completely vulnerable, in a forest she didn't know. But exhaustion had consumed her capacity to feel fear. Or perhaps it was something more. Something in the way he carried her without possessiveness, without malice, that allowed the terror to finally recede. "Do you live alone in this forest?" she asked, more to fill the silence than out of real curiosity. "Yes." "For how long?" "Years." The answer was short but not hostile. "I've lost count." The cabin appeared among the trees like a dream. Small, built with solid logs, with smoke rising lazily from a stone chimney. There was a small fenced garden beside it, and Elena could see medicinal herbs even in the weak moonlight. Kael placed her in a chair near the fireplace with the same care with which he had carried her. The fire had been reduced to embers, but he fed it quickly, and soon the warmth began to heat the room. "I'll prepare hot water for your feet." He moved through the cabin with the efficiency of someone accustomed to solitude. "There are cuts that need to be cleaned." Elena watched him work, still struggling to reconcile the image of the lethal warrior who had dispersed her father's men with this domestic man who now heated water and sorted herbs. "Would you have killed them?" The question escaped before she could contain it. "The henchmen, my father, if they hadn't fled." Kael paused, his back turned to her. "Yes." The simplicity of the answer should have frightened her. It didn't. Without hesitation, "They were hunting you like an animal to sell you to men who would do unimaginable things." He turned, his eyes meeting hers. There would be no hesitation. Elena swallowed hard. There was something comforting in that brutal certainty. After days surrounded by lies and manipulations, Kael's raw honesty was almost refreshing. He approached with a basin of hot water and herbs, kneeling before her. His movements were slow, deliberate, always giving her time to refuse. "May I examine your feet?" She nodded. The first touch was gentle, almost hesitant. Elena watched as he washed away the blood and dirt, his calloused fingers working with a delicacy that completely contrasted with the hands that had fired lethal arrows less than an hour ago. "It will hurt," he warned before applying a paste of herbs to the deeper cuts. "But it will prevent infection." The pain came, sharp and burning, but Elena bit her lip and didn't scream. She had suffered worse things in the past few days. Physical pain was almost welcome. It was honest, direct, different from the emotional pain that consumed her inside. "Mira was afraid of the dark." The words came out without permission, as if the physical pain had opened floodgates she kept closed. "When we were children, I always left a candle burning in our room for her. Our father said it was wasteful, that she needed to learn to be strong." Kael continued working, but she knew he was listening. "I should have seen it." Elena's voice broke. "The signs were there. The way he looked at us when he thought no one was watching, as if he was calculating our value. But I didn't want to see." It was easier to believe the lie. "The fault is not yours." Kael bandaged her foot with strips of clean cloth. "Children shouldn't have to suspect their own parents, but I could have protected Mira. If I had discovered it sooner." "You discovered it now," he interrupted her, not with rudeness, but with firmness. "And you fled. And you survived. That's not failure. It's the first victory of a larger war." Elena looked at him, really looked. For the first time since they had arrived at the cabin, there was pain in those dark eyes. Old, deep, scarred, but never completely healed. This man knew loss. He knew the weight of not being able to protect those he loved. "You lost someone." It wasn't a question. Kael finished bandaging the second foot before answering. "Everyone loses someone, but you lost someone you couldn't save. Someone you should have protected." The silence that followed was dense as fog. For a moment, Elena thought she had gone too far, that he would close off completely. But then something changed in his expression, a crack in the armor, brief but visible. "My sister." The words seemed to cost him something precious. "Many years ago. She was taken by men like those who were chasing you. I was too young, too weak. I couldn't stop them." "Did you find her?" "I found the men who took her." His eyes darkened with memories. "But she was no longer with them. Sold, transported, lost somewhere in the world. I never found out where." Elena felt the weight of that confession. Suddenly, everything made sense: why he lived alone, why he had risked his life for a stranger, why he hadn't hesitated to face armed men to save her. "That's why you helped me. Because you saw your sister in me, perhaps." He stood up, putting away the medical supplies. Or perhaps it's simply because some things are wrong, regardless of who we are or who it reminds us of. Selling human beings is wrong. Parents betraying children is wrong. Some truths don't need personal reasons to be defended. Before she could respond, a sound cut through the night. Horses, many of them, approaching. Kael was at the window before Elena could process what was happening. His eyes swept the darkness, his body instantly transformed from caregiver to warrior. Your father returned. His voice was ice, and he brought reinforcements. Elena felt terror return like an icy wave. Through the window, she could see torches approaching, not 4 or 5, but at least a dozen, snaking through the trees like a demonic procession. How did he find us? Her voice was a strangled whisper. Trackers. Kael was already in motion, grabbing his bow, checking his quiver. He must have returned to the village and hired professionals. They followed the blood trail we left. I led them to you. The realization hit her like a punch. You helped me and I brought death to your door. You brought men who chose to do evil. He looked at her with fierce intensity. The blame is theirs, not yours. And they haven't won yet. You can run, she said, and found that she genuinely wanted him to do so. You know this forest better than anyone. You can disappear before they arrive. Kael approached her, and for a moment, his warrior mask fell completely. Beneath it, there was only a tired man, marked by ancient losses, who had found something to fight for again. You're worth exactly the same as any life. And I'm not going to run. Not again. Not this time. Her father's voice echoed from the darkness. Archer, I know you're in there. Hand her over, and perhaps I'll spare your life. 15 of the best mercenaries money can buy. Not even you can defeat 15 men. Me not. Kael knocked an arrow. But I can guarantee that some of them won't return home. Starting with you. Kill him. Aldrich's order was casual, as if asking a servant to remove a bothersome insect. But bring my daughter alive. The attack began. The first 2 mercenaries who tried the door were dropped before taking 3 steps. Kael's arrows found their marks with lethal precision. He moved like water, flowing from window to window. 3, 4, 5 mercenaries fallen. But there were too many, and his arrows were not infinite. Torches flew through the windows. They were trying to burn them out. Elena dragged herself to the first torch and threw it back outside. The second she smothered with Kael's cloak, burning her hands, but refusing to be a passive victim. The door. Kael shouted. Elena turned as wood splintered under an axe. An enormous mercenary forced through, sword in hand, eyes fixed on her. Kael was on the other side of the cabin. He wouldn't reach her in time. She grabbed the basin of herb water and hurled it at the man's face. He screamed, hands flying to his eyes, and in that moment of blindness, an arrow pierced his neck. Kael was beside her instantly. We need to get out. Back door. Now. They ran into the forest, shouts of pursuit close behind. Kael navigated through darkness with supernatural certainty, but the mercenaries were spreading out to surround them. There, he pointed to a large rock formation. A cave. Exit on the other side. They don't know about it. They entered moments before torches illuminated where they'd been. The cave was narrow, damp, devoid of light. Kael guided her by touch until they emerged in a moonlit clearing. Then Aldrich stepped from the shadows. 2 mercenaries flanked him, swords drawn. In Aldrich's hand, a crossbow pointed at Kael. Trackers know all the forest's tricks, including caves with secret exits. Kael placed Elena behind him. If you shoot me, I'll still kill you before I fall. That's a promise. Perhaps. Aldrich tilted his head. But what if I aim at her? The crossbow swung toward Elena, and Kael moved. He advanced as Aldrich pulled the trigger. The bolt struck his shoulder, but didn't stop him. His arrow embedded itself in Aldrich's thigh. The mercenaries advanced, but Kael expected them. Even wounded, he moved with deadly grace. A dagger found one throat, then flew into the second man's chest. Aldrich crawled away, face distorted with fear. Please, I'll pay anything. How much did your daughters beg when you sold them? It was just business. I needed the money. No, you wanted the money. The difference is important. Elena watched, unable to move. Part of her wanted Kael to kill her father. Kill him, she heard her own voice. He deserves it. Kael raised the dagger and lowered it. No, killing him would be mercy. He's going to live knowing he lost everything. That his daughter saw him for the monster he is. That he'll spend his remaining years fearing every shadow. He turned to Elena. And you'll live knowing you didn't become him. That when you could choose between vengeance and humanity, you chose not to stain your hands. Elena wanted to argue, but looking into Kael's eyes, she understood. Killing Aldrich would be easy. Living with it would be impossible. Mira, she said finally. I still need to find Mira. Kael nodded. Then we'll find her. Dawn found Elena sitting outside the destroyed cabin, watching sunlight paint the sky pink and gold. The mercenaries had fled. Aldrich had been left in the forest alive, but alone. Kael sat beside her, shoulder bandaged where the crossbow bolt had struck him. You're going after her? It wasn't a question. Your sister, I am. I don't know how, I don't know where to go, but I'm going to find her. There's a port city 3 days from here. Merchants pass through. Some deal in the kind of trade your father practiced. If Mira was sold 2 months ago, there may still be records, rumors, clues. You know these people? I know how to find them. There was something dark in his voice. I spent years searching for my own sister. I learned how this world works. Its roots, its markets, its shadows. Elena turned to him. You never found her. No, the word carried the weight of decades. But maybe it's possible to find yours. Would you come with me? The question came before she could stop it. You don't owe me anything. You've already done more than I could ask. But I don't know how to do this alone. Kael was silent for a long moment. Elena could almost see the thoughts passing behind his eyes, the battle between the isolation he had chosen and something else awakening for the first time in years. I built this cabin to escape from the world, he said finally. To forget, to stop feeling the pain of having failed someone I should have protected. Did it work? A bitter laugh escaped him. No. Pain doesn't disappear when we run. It just waits, patiently, until we realize that running and hiding are the same thing. He turned to her with something new in his eyes. Purpose. I'm going with you, not because I owe you, or because I see my sister in you, but because maybe it's time to stop running, to do something that matters. And rescuing a 16-year-old girl from monsters, that matters. Elena felt tears fall. But not from despair, from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Thank you. The word seemed inadequate for everything he had done, but it was all she had. Kael nodded. Rest today. Your feet need another day to heal. Tomorrow, we leave. He walked toward the ruined cabin. Before disappearing inside, he paused. Elena? Yes? We're going to find her. Mira, I promise. And somehow, despite everything, the horrors, the betrayal, the darkness, she now knew Elena believed him. Because some promises, made by certain people in certain moments, carry the weight of destiny. And this was one of them.